hold 3 public hearings in the provision of the Local Government Act of British Columbia to hear submissions relative to temporary use permit 2019-008R and temporary use permit 2026-002 and the rezoning amendment number RZ 2026-002. This is the public's opportunity to make representations to council. All persons believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed temporary use permits or the rezoning amendment shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters in the proposed bylaw. I would ask that these members of the public who wish to speak to commence your address to this council by clearly stating your name and your address. Council will not debate the matters of the proposed bylaw or the temporary use permit with individual citizens, but we may ask questions of you following the presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views, which will later be considered by council in a regular meeting. No one will be or should be discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. Following the public hearings, council will not accept further communications or presentations from the public or the applicant respecting these bylaws. The first public hearing today is for temporary use permit 2019-008R. If approved, will allow short-term rental within an existing family dwelling at 2442 Fairways Drive. Staff, are there any written submissions on this?
No written submissions.
No written submissions. Does anybody here or online wish to speak on this matter? Calling a second time, if anyone wishes to speak on this matter. And a third final time. Okay, seeing none, that public hearing is closed. On the second public hearing, we will hear as on temporary use permit 2026-002, if approved, will allow short-term rental within an existing family dwelling at 2417 Fairways Drive. Are there any written submissions on this?
Through the mayor, there's no written submissions.
Thank you. Does anybody here or online wish to speak on this temporary use permit application? Once. And I'm calling for a second time, anyone wishing to speak? And a third and final time. Seeing none, we're allowed to close. And on to number 3, RZ 2026-002, if approved, will permit cannabis retail and retail sale of cannabis products at unit number 8, 3250 Village Way. Staff, are there any written submissions?
Through the mayor, there were a total of 54 written submissions, 30 in support and 24 in opposition to the rezoning amendment.
Okay, thank you. And are anybody online or in person here wishing to speak on this matter? Dave? Would like to come up to the mic? I'm just gonna let everybody know, because I'm assuming we're gonna have a number of speakers. And I believe as proponents, they're gonna be speaking first. If you've already written in a letter to us, council has heard that this is your opportunity to submit or share something new. If you've already written a letter, that we ask that you respectfully, if you don't have something new to add, allow others who do to have that time. So try to keep it to a couple of minutes. And the mic is yours when ready.
Hi, I'm pretty sure everybody in this room knows me, but if you don't, I am Sonia Leslie, and this is my business partner, Highland Bike. I've been running Flight Deck for 6 years now without incident. Who we are your neighbors. And we've been running this business successfully without any issues since 2020. We are not a distant corporate entity seeking to extract value from Sun Peaks. We live here, ski here, and raise our families here and volunteer here. Over 5 years at our current location, we've built a team of long-term local employees and a business we are genuinely proud of. We not only own this business, but others that contribute to this community. We've invested in our community through event sponsorships, local partnerships, and daily acts of civic pride. We have personal stakes in the success and character of this resort community, not only as business owners, but as parents raising young children here. We come before council today, not simply as applicants, but as community members asking to continue serving our community from a location that makes sense for us. Reduces our footprint and integrates naturally into the established commercial fabric of the village core. The reason we're relocating is our current premise is over 2,000 square feet. It was selected to meet the municipal requirements at the time of our initial licensing. Over the past 5 years of operation, our retail model has matured, while stigma and fear of the industry have subsided. A smaller purpose-fit 200 square foot space, where we're proposing at number 8, 3250 Village Way, aligns with how our customers actually shop. Quick, efficient visits averaging under 5 minutes. This move will reduce our operating footprint, lower operating costs, and place us within walking, skiing, and cycling distance for the guests and residents we serve, consistent with Sun Peak's commitment to reducing vehicular reliance. It will also consolidate cannabis retail within the village core, where administration has confirmed it is consistent with the OCP village core policies. We also commit to rescinding the site-specific cannabis retail zoning at 1160 Sun Peaks Road once the new location is approved, ensuring there is no net increase in cannabis retail presence in Sun Peaks. Essentially, we are a retail store just like the liquor store, and just like the liquor store, we also pay the same $500 business fee they do, but we're not given the same restrictions they are. Unit number 8. 3250 Village Way does not exist in isolation. It sits within a commercially active corridor that already includes, to the south of us, a licensed retail liquor store, to the west of us, Morrissey's Public House, a liquor primary establishment, east, a real estate office, and north, a storage common property. This proposed location will occupy a position between 2 alcohol retail establishments, both of which are regulated by the same provincial body, the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch that governs our license. The commercial character of this corridor is already defined by regulated adult use retail. We respectfully submit that placing a cannabis retailer between a liquor store and a pub is not an anomaly. It is a natural fit within an already established regulated use environment. The planning administration supports this application. The Sun Peaks Resort Municipality's own planning staff have reviewed this application and concluded that the retail sale of illegal products such as cannabis is equivalent to the sale of alcohol or cigarettes occurring across the hall from the subject property, or the sale of any other illegal product or good. Administration recommends council proceed through the reading, public hearing, and adoption process. No federal, provincial, or municipal enforcement action has ever been taken against Slytech Cannabis Co. No technical issues arose during the review process. We share that assessment and ask council to give it appropriate weight. Both our current and proposed locations are designated village core. In the SPMR official community plan, the following village core policies directly support this application. Section 7.3.1, direct guest-oriented commercial services to areas designated as village core. Section 7.3.12, encourage commercial uses that support the vitality of the resort-oriented village, including retail commercial. Section 7.3.14, encourage the development of commercial uses that provide services for residents living in Sun Peaks. Legal cannabis retail is a guest-oriented commercial service. It serves residents and visitors alike. It belongs in the village core. There are many other resort communities that we often look to, as we shall say, older siblings, for advice, including Whistler and Tofino, that have seamlessly integrated stores into the heart of the community, despite initially not wanting them at all. They've re-examined their policies. Whistler now has 5 stores, one of which is directly in the village stroll. Cannabis is held to a higher standard than liquor for regulation. It is worth noting that, as administration acknowledged in the council report, cannabis retail sales are more heavily regulated than alcohol sales, likely due to the possible social stigma associated with cannabis and the relative newness of its legalization. I also want to add that the social stigma was developed from racial issues and economic policies that were benefiting the people in charge at the time. Our products are federally regulated to be sealed with an excise stamp and other tracking numbers, subject to strict provincial licensing overseen by the LCRD with regular inspections, restricted by municipal business license conditions, including security requirements, operating hours, caps, and proximity restrictions. No equivalent regulatory framework applies to the businesses immediately adjacent to our proposed location. Our track record. In over 5 years of operation, we've had 0 provincial infractions, 0 municipal enforcement actions, and 0 federal violations. Our store is regular stop for LCRB secret shoppers, And not once in 6 years has an employee failed to correctly identify and refuse a secret shopper. We do not sell to minors. We do not permit public consumption. We operate a safe, respectful retail environment that guests from around the world have remarked upon positively. You can check our Google reviews. Voluntary social contract with the community. Flight Deck Cannabis Co. has proactively developed a community social responsibility commitment, a social contract that outlines the specific enforceable steps you can take to be a responsible neighbor at the Grand residences. These are not aspirational statements, they are operational commitments. Our first one is respect for youth and families. As parents, we take this especially seriously. We understand concerns about the visibility of our storefront to minors and commit to the following. There are also regulations within the Cannabis Act that control promotion and display cannabis to protect minors. The provincial and federal government has already created the framework to protect children. Plus, we commit to the following. Frosted glazing on the lower 4 feet of all the storefront windows and entry doors, eliminating direct sight lines into the retail space from a child's eye level. This is voluntary, not required in the Cannabis Act. Sections 29 and 30 of the Cannabis Act prohibit displays of cannabis accessories, or the packages and labels in a way that can be seen by a young person. Use of display cases and other shielding where necessary. Tasteful, minimal regulation compliant signage. No imagery or messaging that can appeal to minors. We recognize that being a good neighbor means more than compliance. It means courtesy. Loitering and public behavior. Flight Deck Cannabis Co. has operated for 5 years without a single complaint related to loitering or public disturbance. We nonetheless commit to posting clear visible signage at the entrance reminding patrons of applicable cannabis consumption laws and prohibited public consumption areas. I've noticed that the municipality has really added to the visibility of the smoking areas and what is acceptable, so we appreciate that. Staff training to politely discourage loitering and ensure customers exit respectfully. Maintaining a well-lit, clean, and monitored storefront at all times. Full cooperation with local bylaws and enforcement officers if any concerns arise. We also commit to, and this is something we're already doing, public consumption mitigation for pocket ashtrays. In recognition of concerns about outdoor cannabis consumption near the Grand residences in the broader village, Flight Deck Cannabis Co. will continue to distribute free pocket ashtrays to our customers and the community at large. To date, we have distributed over 5,000. This initiative was a proactive measure we took before there were any problems. Gives customers a practical, discreet way to extinguish and contain cannabis waste. Actively discourages littering and improves the aesthetic cleanliness of public spaces. Demonstrates our commitment to the community standards beyond our 4 walls. This is a genuine investment in the cleanliness and character of Sun Peaks, funded by us and no cost to the municipality. We even give them out to non-customers in the village that we see smoking cigarettes. They are always appreciated. 24-hour security. In compliance with SPMR Business License Bylaw Section 5.5 and the LCRB, we will install and maintain a monitored response alarm system, security cameras throughout the retail space and at the outside entrance. Ongoing community engagement. We commit to maintaining open and responsive lines of communication with the Strata Council of the Grand Residences, Sun Peaks Resort LLP, Sun Peaks Resort Municipality, local business owners and neighbors. I already have a strong relationship with this community in this building, as I've been operating my current business in this location since 2017. We will respond promptly and professionally to any concerns raised and will participate in and support local community initiatives as we always have. We did receive a carefully read letter from the Strata Council dated March 19th after our request of support on March 12th. We respect that Strata Council has responsibility to advocate for residents and that their concerns were raised in good faith. We take each concern seriously and respond directly below. However, it also seems as a very short turnaround period to have feedback from all the residents, just a few days. Concern, increased traffic near unit number 8, which is beside the speed locker and the primary entrance. We understand this concern, however, we would know our average daily customer traffic is about 20 to 40 customers on a typical day. A modest and manageable flow. Customer visits average under 5 minutes. The proposed unit is well served by existing 30-minute short stay parking. Customers will be dispersing from the store within minutes. They're not lingering. They want to go home and use their bathroom. This is not a high traffic destination. It is a quick service retail shop that now will be more accessible to most on foot, and especially the East Village, which is where most tourist accommodation is located, other than the village core. Their other concern was unit number 8 is within the residential building and visitors may perceive it as part of the residences. While we disagree with this observation, as the unit will be clearly marked as an independent business, as it is now, we are sensitive to this perception. Our social contract commits directly and addresses this. Our windows and minimal signage ensure our storefront presents professionally and discreetly. We're willing to work with building management on additional signage for wayfinding that clarifies the retail residential distinction. We would also respectfully note that the Grand Residence already contains a liquor retail store, a fully licensed alcohol sales establishment within the same building that is Village Walk faces. The principle of regulated adult use retail within a residential mixed-use building is already established at this address. Another concern was that cannabis retail does not align with the luxury, family-oriented positioning of the Grand Residences. We understand this concern and we do not dismiss it. We would offer the following perspective. Sunpeaks is a world-class resort community with sophisticated and diverse guest base. Many of our current customers are the same guests who stay at the Grand Residences, ski at Sunpeaks, and dine at Morrissey's Public House. Legal cannabis is a regulated mainstream consumer product. It is used by adults of all backgrounds, incomes, and lifestyles, including those who chose luxury accommodation. The Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch does not distinguish between the prestige of a building when issuing licenses. Both alcohol and cannabis retail are considered compatible with resort communities throughout BC. Our discrete store design, access via a sliding glass door from the Village Walk corridor with no visual presence from the main Village Walkway, minimizes any perceived disruption to the building's character. When the staff from the municipality came, they couldn't even find their location. You can see them searching. So it is quite discreet. Another concern was having children walk past a cannabis shop every time they get their skis is unacceptable. We hear this concern clearly, and it is the most emotionally resonant objection raised. We want to respond to it with both honesty and empathy as parents ourselves. Children also walk past the liquor store every time they retrieve their skis. There is no attempt or need for them to hide their product from the public here. However, we are voluntarily offering to frost the lower portion of our windows to exceed the surrounding 19+ business establishment. Children walk past Morris Public House, which serves alcohol. The regulatory physical proximity of alcohol retail to the children in the village core is not considered disqualifying. We ask for the same standard to be applied to cannabis retail. And in the summertime, you can actually see the Morrissey's deck and people drinking from the playground. We're not asking to be exempt from community standards. We're asking to be held to the same standards as the establishments already operating in this corridor. On the 250-meter buffer zone, we acknowledge that 2 parks, a playground and the old soccer field, fall within the 250-meter buffer prescribed by SPMR Business License Bylaw Section 5.3. Council's ability to grant an exemption to this provision is a matter of discretion, guided by the totality of the circumstances. We ask Council to consider the buffer regulations were introduced around 2018-2019, and the original rationale is not clearly documented in the municipal records. But as the original applicants who attended the council meetings where this was discussed, we can provide some context. This was a cautionary response meant to be placed in the interim, where the impact of legal cannabis and stigma around legalization was unknown. The council considered other community practices in shaping this policy. Many of these communities, like Whistler, who originally were not going to allow stores, now have 5. Our current location, 1160 Sunpeaks Road, has operated without incident for over 5 years, despite its proximity to community amenities and the largest family neighborhood, which is full of children, Fairfield, and a formal local pub track, which was well under 250 meters from our location. The physical reality of the proposed location is that unit number 8 is an interior commercial space accessed through a building corridor, not a street facing storefront visible to passerbys. The municipality already permits a liquor store and a primary liquor store establishment, as well as a grocery store that also sells tobacco, adjacent to the same 250-meter buffer zone with no apparent exemption process required. We respectfully submit that the spirit of the buffer rule protecting children from commercial cannabis exposure is more than met by our voluntary social contract commitments, and that a site-specific exemption is appropriate and proportionate. What we are asking for is we respectfully request that council support zoning amendment bylaw number 0235, 2026 through the first and second reading and our public hearing. Grant a site-specific exemption from SPMRM business license bylaw section 5.3 in respect of the two parks within the 250-meter buffer zone. Forward, the provincial resolution of support of cannabis retail sales application job number 123286 to the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. What we commit to is in exchange for this approval, Flight Deck Cannabis Co. commits to the full terms of our community social responsibility commitment, including window glazing, which we've already discussed, displays, inward facing, not visible, signage will be minimal. I did send in a picture. It'll just be basically one logo on our door. Security, community distribution of pocket ashtrays, ongoing engagement with Strata Municipality, SPR LLP, and our neighbors. Compliance, we have zero tolerance for underage sales, full LCRB compliant, we already do. And we're willing to rescind our old zoning at 1160 Sun Peaks Road. In conclusion, Flight Deck Cannabis Co. is not a newcomer asking for a chance. We are a proven, compliant, community-minded business with over 5 years of zero incident operation in Sun Peaks, asking to continue serving our community from a location that makes sense. We believe this relocation represents a natural and appropriate integration into an already established commercial corridor. We believe our social contract commitments demonstrate our sincerity and our accountability. And we believe that evidence, regulatory health, planning, and practical evidence supports council's approval. The owners of the store, our staff, and our families call Sun Peaks home. We're invested in its success, its character, and its future just as much as any other resident, or in the case of the residences, quarter share residents. We ask for the opportunity to continue contributing to it. We are available to meet with council, municipal staff, strata representatives, or any concerned resident at any time to discuss any additional conditions or commitments that will strengthen our relationship and community. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
First place you to speak. State your name and your address, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, and your name and
My
address.
name is Teresa Baxton. I'm a full-time Sun Peaks resident at number 15, 1240 Alpine Road. And I'm here today to support the rezoning amendment as requested. In my opinion, those will make a effect to the community, and this will be a positive move for the Sun Peaks resort. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Rose. I'm a full-time Sun Peaks resident. I reside at 5308 Lookout Ridge Drive. I'm here in support of the rezoning as a parent as well. I think it's a great move for the community, for community-minded people who always support everything they're asked to. And I believe that it will have no negative impact on the community in a negative way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amber Stewart. I'm a full-time resident. I live at 1363 Burville Drive. I'm in full support, and I also think in the years I have explained many times to different people how to get to Flight Deck. I think this would be an awesome way to help achieve that, especially with people who, for say, come on tour buses and have chronic pain and need easy access, especially in the summer when the charter buses are running. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nobel. I have been many faces in this community. I'm here to, for a reason, obviously, sorry. Many faces in this community for years, but you can find me at Flight Deck Cannabis for the last 5 years, 6 years, since the beginning. I've built so many meaningful relationships with customers, either local or tourists. They mean a lot to me. We pride ourselves on offering a safe, clean, welcoming, and educational space to provide the experiences we offer. I fully believe the current location of our store can be better utilized for expanding the west side of Sun Peaks. Even more so, I believe by allowing this move, we will be able to provide an even safer, more welcoming service to the tourists by being more central for them and not having them be dependent on shuttle services or in the summer when there is no transportation. it just provides a more a more safe experience to get to our location. We just want to provide you all with our best, and we believe that being in a more central location, we will be able to provide safer and full educational experience with our students.
I'm Kel Meisner. I live at 2160 Sun Peaks Road, number 7. I am here in support of the rezoning amendment. My first season here, and I have not found any place that is more welcoming than Flood Neck. Everybody made me feel completely at home, and major reason that I never want to leave Sun Peaks. So thank you very much.
My name is Jenny Fee. I live at 7335, Present in my crops. I have been working with them for a little while as well, and I fully support this. Mostly to do with the fact that we have people who call us and ask if we can make it easier for them to purchase from us because they can't get to us, because they can't make that walk, and they cannot enter their buses. In being a more essential place, I believe that it would be, widely appreciated by those people who can't get there but want to be able to ski and come back and come back with a CBD bomb afterwards to allow their muscles to return. Eat anti-contact. I fully support it.
I'm Karen Chonky. I own Mountain Adventure Tours. I've been a long time resident and family, my parents and community. I'm fully supportive of rezoning. This is a service that people want and a product that is really varied, and the staff have always been incredibly knowledgeable and eager to share the many different uses and application of this, and have been nothing but supportive of all community initiatives, donating and volunteering, really supportive of this. I live at 26 4007 Drive. I have been a long-term village employee as I worked in 30s. I can't tell you how many times I had to explain to customers how to get to Flight Deck, and in the summer it's difficult. I think it'll be an addition to the village. I'm also a parent, and I see no issue with children being able to see them or have access. I don't know if it's good.
Good afternoon, my name is Seth Ryan. I was at 1240 Alpine Road. As someone who works adjacent to the proposed location, I believe that this will be no further foot traffic. Will not be any issues with minors, as we are right there as well. And in my almost decade of working against that location, we have never had an incident either, and I believe they will hold themselves to the same respect as we do. Thank you.
Council. Funny enough, 7 years ago, right around this exact week, I was in front of some of you. I'm about the same amount of nervousness, but a hell of a lot less pregnant, so no pregnancy announcements today. 7 years ago, I was here speaking on behalf of the rezoning for 1160 Sun Peaks Road, which I am an owner of. And I was privy to a lot of the conversations through those council meetings. 7 years ago, council made an interim decision to restrict retail cannabis, the primary factor being the unknown of legal cannabis sales and how they would impact the municipality. At the time, the council looked at Whistler, Surrey, and Kamloops as a reference to sound practice. Whistler and Surrey at the time refused to allow any cannabis retail. Kamloops opted for 150 meter setback from schools only. There were no restrictions placed on parks or libraries. With time, statistics, and education, those councils have adjusted their policies to reflect objective facts and reality and let fear take a step back. Whistler now has 5 retail cannabis locations.
Surrey has just started issuing business licenses in 2025 and now has 11 retail locations. In my opinion, it is time for Sun Peaks Council to adjust its policy to reflect the objective facts. And while taking legitimate concerns and fears into consideration, not rely on a stigma and bias as grounds for logical decision-making practices. From former CAO Brenner's 2018 report to council on the initial bylaw around cannabis retail zoning, quote, "This bylaw amendment is a temporary or interim measure. Further amendments later are inevitable. At the time, it made sense. There was fear, there was unknown. This decision was sound and it was logical. I argue 6 years in, council has had enough evidence to logically align cannabis regulations with the existing tobacco and alcohol regulations as the provincial and federal regulators have. The applicants are simply not asking for an exception to the rules, but they're asking to play on the same level. Council has in theory done 6 years of due diligence simply by watching the business run. The question for council to consider is not, is cannabis family oriented? Is it wellness? Is it luxury? That's already been decided. It's already here. Questions for council to consider include within the residences, there already exists retail alcohol sales, tobacco sales, and open alcohol consumption. 19 plus products are already here. Now, with 6 years of exemplary business practices and 0 bylaw complaints or noted increase in crime that is attributed to the cannabis store, what reasoning outside of stigma and bias is there to treat cannabis differently than alcohol and tobacco, both being readily available in the same building? Other questions include, does this materially change the strata building in any way that impedes legally registered encumbrances such as building schemes or OCP? And simply the answer is no. A retail store does not interfere either. What measurable negative impacts has the existing cannabis retailer created in Sun Peaks? The answer is none. What evidence, not opinions, show the proposed location will create impacts that do not currently already exist in that corridor? The answer is none. What planning objective is achieved by preventing the relocation while continuing to permit cannabis retail elsewhere in the community? Is a 250 meter setback for cannabis only, but not retail alcohol, tobacco, or open consumption still as relevant to the concern as it was 7 years ago? The 250 meter setback, in my opinion, was an arbitrary number, where even today the administration cannot find sound reasoning behind it. After 6 years of evidence, it is my opinion that it is illogical to continue to treat a legal retail business differently than its most similar regulated industry. Thank you.
Calling for a second time for anyone still wishing to speak.
Sean Rickwood, 1316 Residences. Just out of curiosity, could I request a show of hands of public representation here that's from the residences? So that's 3. Four. And I think that previously it was stated that you council had received approximately 50 responses. And of that, about 50-50 split. So my concern today is that with the 5, do we know how many residences there are to get an idea of just how much representation that was? Is it, can anyone tell me?
188 owners of that building, 188 shares.
188 shares, so pretty low representation, so I am concerned as well. That just with notice, it was just brought to my attention this as well. I happen to be here this week, so it's convenient for me to be here tonight. Say what this probably is as well. But we have 3 other groups of owners that aren't able to participate, likely because they're not with us yet. So I am concerned about short notice and representation of the residences. So that's just my first concern with that. There was some questions that I'll just go, this is from council. Just talking about, so bear with me while I bring a video. This was a concern over safety. Cannabis products are always in high demand, and usually expensive, so criminal fees always obviously targeted. This is a study that was done, these are my words, and these are what anybody can find, like this very simple search, so. There, what it is, this is for council's information. The main concern of the cannabis industry is to prevent their businesses from all kinds of theft. I don't think we need to do it, I think that's common sense, right? I think cannabis is a high traffic area. I don't think there's any cannabis facility that I've ever seen that doesn't have open window for it's an open store. So I would ask council, can anybody tell me in this community of any other storefront that has bars on the window?
The liquor store.
Does it?
Yeah.
So cheap. Right, so just out of curiosity, just to kind of reiterate, and I just want to know, like, this is an animosity, and I don't want to go down that path at all. I fully support.
Sir,
Speak into the
if
microphone.
you're presenting here, speaking to council,
Thank
we're
you.
not engaged.
I fully support
Okay,
the idea of the cannabis business, and your 6 years of history here has shown that the community supports it too. So just for the record, there's nothing to do with that. The question or the concerns that I have, obviously as a resident owner, is strictly for the residents and the placement in the residence. So with that, I would ask council as well, is there anybody at the table that is not familiar with the location of the application and the access to it? Or are you all familiar with it? And
yes,
so the concern being now is that this is a residence. The liquor store, fantastic. The cannabis store in the village, they gave support, right? I believe the community wants. The residents through a lobby, I don't think is the place to put it. And I'm not sure what the negatives were that you have received, but obviously you'll be out time to respond to that. The reasons I say that is if you're familiar with the residents, is there anything preventing any one of you from going into any area of the residence and just walking up and knocking on the door?
you mean like a guest room, sir?
Sorry?
Just a second, sir, you're addressing council, please, I can ask the audience, please, to not engage, so are you referring to like somebody going up and accessing a guest room? Is
Yes,
that what you mean?
yes.
Well, you would need a key pass to get to the floors.
I have a residence. And my wife with me as well, unfortunately not here today. So we thought we'd test that theory.
Mhm.
And it is there, so the fact is, you can walk in that residence, go up by the washrooms, no key fob to access that door. You can go onto the elevator and push a button. And access any floor of that building. Does anybody want to repeat that?
Can we?
Sir. The engineer, okay,
Yeah.
share with us what you'd like to share, we're not here to have the audience debate.
That is a concern. And that is a test of the theory that I tested this week, so I would ask council to make this fact. This is my opinion, you'll probably hear another opinion. I feel that anybody can access any room in that residence merely by walking in either of the two opening doors, which although the upper one does have off area, it does not require a key. So that allows access for anybody in there. We've heard a statement of access being an average of 40 foot traffic. So that's allowing an additional 40 people access into those suites. And I don't think that, I think that's a secure safety risk that I don't think is acceptable. And I would ask council to consider that and make sure that there's, if it does consider this application or we're going with it, the safety risk on concern is that. The other aspect I'm not sure about how it would impact it, but I think council should be concerned with is I don't know and I haven't heard what the vehicle traffic impact is. And I'm sure that the owners can speak to how much vehicle traffic they have, but I'm not sure where the vehicle traffic would park other than at the campground. That's the only thing I can see. So that's my concerns as an owner. Lastly, another study, I can read it, I'll just state it as common sense. A study has proven that the cannabis in residential environment has depreciated property values 3 to 4%. Again, I'm not making it up, it's just a standard that's out there. Now, I think I'll move it now, thank you.
Thank you.
I can prepare in case there was so. It is my understanding that letters were issued to all, properties within certain proximity, as well as the public hearings. I believe that's standard protocol. So there are 188 shares, ownership shares in the residences, 123 in Cahilty and 64 in Fireside. So to give an idea, there's over 300 properties that would have been mailed this letter. And less than 10% of owners of the grant responded, and less than 5% of the area responded with opposition. So just something to consider. Secondly, the lobby is open right now. Anyone could walk in currently. Additionally, this is not a consumption site. This is a retail site. You go to the drugstore, you buy your makeup, you don't go and put your makeup on outside the store. You go home and you utilize that. There's a liquor store next door. You go, you buy your beer, you don't consume it outside. But there is a consumption site at the pub, and the people who go to the pub, the customers there need to walk through the residence's lobby while potentially inebriated to use the washroom. So that risk, that safety risk is already there. I argue that a retail store is not going to mitigate that, particularly because we do not, they do not, on the license, they do not sell to the inebriated customers.
I gotta say, it's a little affirming that it was 7 years ago, was that how long like that's been around? 7 years, you just state your name and address, please, sir.
Currently at number 32160
Thanks, man.
7 years ago, I stood in front of a group this large, maybe larger at Hearthstone, and I said, I didn't think the location was good. That it should be in the village, and I'm glad to see now that this is where we're headed. And I do agree that Kyle, Melissa, Sonia, Pat, the staff, top notch, absolutely. And this may not swallow down right, but I feel that this is a strategy issue. This is a cart before. If 188 residents don't want cannabis shop in the building, they have the right to say it. As a community, clearly support them. We clearly want a cannabis in the village. Where it's gonna be, again, I don't think it's up to us as a community at this point. I feel that they need to get their zoning and their strata. And the 180 people in that building, if it's Fireside, they gotta get the Fireside people on. Then we can start working on rezone. I feel that going through the motions and the cost that this is of rezoning a property that strata's gonna squash potentially is a little bit cart before the horse. That's me, that's my opinion. Again, I think these guys are the guys to run the cannabis shop in this town. And I think we've done a phenomenal job. They have a building, they have a space, have a cannabis shop in this town. And I'm glad it's here, and I hope it never leaves, I'm sure it won't. That's it.
Sarah Grant, 2463 Fairways. I'm in full support of this move as well, as somebody who daily sends somebody along, speaking on behalf of the worship, working there, I do send people there daily. And the one thing people can struggle with is the distance and the safety, and along with giving them directions to get down to the flight deck. I always have to then follow up, oh, you can go get this product there, but here are the directions, and please don't walk on the road, please take the Valley Trail. A lot of people are just using the flower of marijuana to cannabis, just to get high, it keeps scared, there's so many different ways to use it, safely use it as well, and I think having it in the village would be really great for our guests. And especially the ones that can't get all the way to like that in the winter. So I just wanted to be aware of that, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Chuck Bruno, and today I'm speaking on behalf of Tourism Some Peaks. So Tourism Some Peaks supports the proposed relocation of high-tech cannabis to the village core, recognizing that convenient access to regulated retail services enhances the guest experience, contributes to a diverse range of village amenities, and supports Some Peaks as a vibrant, diverse, and inviting year-round resort destination for both visitors and residents. Thank you.
My name's Joey Shaw, and I live at 7305 PLT Crescent in Minecraft. Definitely in support of this move. The store has been a great addition to the community. People used to access the delivery company called Sunny Spargo. When people used to call us and wonder how we're going to get product and ask us to bring it up from cabinets. Since it's been here, more money's coming directly into our community, we don't get that request anymore. But we do often have people ask us in clients that we deliver to how they can get their product, and if they're out in the East Village and they're here with their children and it's minus 20, that's not an easy task for them as parents or members of our community. So definitely in support. I think some of the strat stuff could be dealt with quite easily with a few small adjustments and key parts of the very little. But that would require especially the
Ryan Schmaltz, 2540 Downview Drive. I'm a residential owner, a business owner, a parent, and my wife's one of the teachers up here. I'm the second longest acting owner operator of a business at Sun Peaks. We opened up Mountain Head Pizza July 4th, 1998. I was 22, so if you didn't have my wife, we raised 2 children up here, and I pick up my kids in the park every day, which is within the 250 meters. My wife, myself, and my business are 100% support of Sonia and Kyle and their families. They're invested here. They do an amazing job. As a business owner, I'm 100% support. And a couple things that you guys should consider, council, is that we are a resort town. Our number one thing here is tourism. We don't have a resort. We don't have a lot of we have tourism. In the last 6 years, have probably sent hundreds of people to Flight Deck, trying to explain to them how to get there, shuttle hours, et cetera, that everybody else before me has explained. So I think it'd be absolutely amazing for them to be in the village. And for the tourist experience, it would be amazing. One thing to put in perspective, you guys, if I try to open up Mountain Head Pizza today in the location that I'm at, it would probably be impossible. You guys want to know why? Because it smells like pizza in the room above. And it would never get through. But all the owners above have got used to that smell and they love it now. They curse me because they gained some weight. They say, I was getting hungry today, but I went down and got a slice of pizza. But I would never get past it yet. So when you're talking about quarter share owners with minimal representation today, if they really were against it, they should show up. These are year-round families that are invested in this community. We are tourism based. This is a huge thing for tourism, for our guest experience, whether it's the bath bombs or anything else that they sell. So it would be terrible if it was denied, but we are 100% support. And thank you. No.
We have online Patrick Taylor. Agree with the- Oh, sorry.
Speak, and then we'll switch over.
Hi, I'm Shereen Clark and I reside at 1328 Burkeville Drive. I have been a Sun Peaks patron for
for the century now. And I had the pleasure of knowing, all these great community members, most of the people in the room, this was my I have the utmost respect for the business of like cannabis, and I believe that they are well educated and will be fully transparent and will address any potential concerns. But in my opinion, I don't think there are any concerns regarding this business moving into the village. And I agree with everything that everyone else has said, and I fully support this and think it should move forward.
Now we have somebody in line.
Patrick Taylor, he just wanted to say, agree with the comments that Sun Peaks residents owners are not represented and chat and function is off, no way to participate virtually. Agree with these comments, the standing of people outside the residence is questionable. Residents were given 24 hours notice to file letters to council on this matter as well. Not surprised that low turnout.
Calling for a third and final time, anybody wishing to speak on this rezoning application? Oh, one more.
Hello, my name is Mike Shaw. I live at 730 Gilford Crescent. We've lived here for 10 years now. Both of our kids are graduated from the school program. We all lived in the business for 9 years, also in Scarlet. I stood before council and testified towards the safety of the entrance to the old location, the existing location, rather. And we've had no more vehicle instances there as well. To address the parking, there is 30-minute parking in the grand parking lot for use for any retail stores. We heard the liquor store, you can also park in the tourism area, some beach for 5 minutes or so. Gravel parking in the use, so there's no need to park at the school playground. We carry the product across. So I believe that as far as the safety concern goes, as part of the showman, I don't think there's that much for safety concern. We don't live in, let's say, Rock Horse Campus downtown, where we have the yoga stoppers. Bend over like the. It's just people using cannabis, and this, from my experience, I've been a long time cannabis user, almost everybody in my family uses cannabis, and good enjoy his mom. We take CBD oil to help her sleep and breakfast things. I put them like the cannabis. I don't think there's any risk whatsoever of any more criminal activity in the grand residences. And as one percent each driver, we also have access to 90% of the buildings in the village. Not one of the hotels are locked. You can walk up any floor, but each door is locked, each room. So I don't think that that's a safety concern anymore. Thank you.
Again, just for council's, been with. After listening to them, no objection, not at all, to the business. I think the business is welcome, I think it needs to be in the almost one of the understanding, but obviously it's not together. It's likely, an opportunity where that's all the building and do no great stuff. It needs to be in the village, I don't disagree with that at all. The liquor store has its own storefront. It isn't the issue of that, it's the access to the lobby. There are other areas that have the own storefront. I know that they're saying, massage clinic right now, I believe it's coming open. There's other areas that would suit this facility much better than through the lobby of the business. That's the only issue I think that's here, and I don't think it was represented well by the owners of the quarter share. The other comment, I've been seeing this now as season package for 20 years. Right, I own property in here. I'm not a quarter resident, folks said I'm here, so thank you very much.
Last and final call, anybody wishing to speak? Okay. Sorry, no. Hearing
Mr.
none.
Mayor.
Oh, go ahead.
If I may, I do have a question for the applicants.
Yes.
And I think we're permitted,
Yes, we are.
clarification. So during the presentation, you referenced social contract and voluntary social contract. I'm not sure if this is a question to them or to staff, but we haven't seen that as a council. So can you clarify what that is and what it says?
Yeah, it was just included in our presentation that was emailed to you guys last week. So it's basically, let me just open that page again. It's just our way to go above and beyond, which includes window glazing, so we don't have. I'm just gonna set up over here. When we initially opened our business, all windows had to be frosted. The LCRB, I think it was within a year or two, rescinded that for safety concerns because our CMP will not enter a location when they cannot see what's going inside. It was plus it was just depressing for employees. So we are committing to frosting the 4 feet, so it just protects children. Also, inward facing displays, like displays won't be visible. Very simple signage, so just one logo on the door. Security, will continue to distribute our pocket ashtrays. We do not get any like money from those pocket ashtrays, so that's something we're willingly doing to help the community. Also on that note, I do cash batch every year for 20-something years, and there's very few cannabis roaches versus cigarette butts. There's like millions of cigarette butts. And so we're also, you know, helping combat that problem by giving it our ashtrays. We're also committing to ongoing engagement with the Strata Municipality, FPR LLP, and our neighbors. We'll continue to be compliant with the LCRB. And we are willing to rescind our old locations zoning. That's our social contract. I would also just like to add to the previous speaker. This, as it is now, that building, people are coming in and out of that and using it as even a walkthrough, not even necessarily visiting any business. People are just walking through, using the bathrooms. It is an open space. In the past, they were locking the doors that were actually making it impossible for me to run my business because the cameras that were there were actually not running. I don't know if that was public knowledge, but they had vandalism from local teenagers that were bored because there was nothing for them to do. This was like pre-park. And I was like, well, just look on the cameras. They're like, oh, the cameras are broken. So that has been since fixed. The doors are open and running 24 hours now. I think the access could be easily addressed with just fixing the fobs. Many apartment buildings have fob specific floor access. I think that's a really easy fix.
Right?
If I may, the reason I asked that question is a voluntary social contract. Quite often in zoning law is a specific written contract between an applicant and a municipality that anchors in stone certain obligations, social obligations, if you will. And I understand what the applicant is saying, these are their social commitments, but we don't have a contract before us as part and parcel of this application to require those things of the applicant.
Okay, well,
Councilor Gillespie.
I'll address Sonia. So the social contract, did you say, or I might have got this confused, when you were engaging with Strata Council, have you presented this social contract? Was there any feedback that you can speak to?
we do not, we just alerted them that we were planning this rezoning and it was kind of an instant shutdown and conversations did not continue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further speakers. Thank you.
Oh.
Okay, hold on.
Hi, my name is Julia Temple. I'm at 73 Old Drive, Maple Crescent. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I work in Morrissey Hub, so I've had a very far of it. Few thoughts came up while I've been listening to some people talk. Number one, I just like to say, anything you're buying at a cannabis store is typically discreet. If there's any food in the household, that you know, you're gonna walk out with whatever your product is big or whatever. It's a lot of people use that and just to the liquor store, and it's a little bit harder to hide a 2, 4, and 3 bottles of wine at a time. The only concern I did have is, people using that cannabis and then coming into any liquor primary. I know that a lot of people don't try to, mix those two combinations of alcohol and cannabis. However, I would say, I am in full support and, I have a lot of agreement and support with the staff to, guide people. And, sorry, I'm a nervous speaker. The only other thing I would say for me was the council, right outside my doors on the bartender, I see so many people smoking cigarettes. Rarely do I smell cannabis. People don't buy a pack of cigarettes and go take it home. That's what people want to do with any cannabis really products. Thank you.
No?
Another comment online. Dr. Jason Keller, I can confirm that residents of the building received notice of this proposal only on June 3rd, which was one day before responses were due. As residents, we did not receive anything approaching appropriate notice to give feedback on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Third and final time, no further speakers from the audience.
That says it.
Clear, very closed. (401). I declare this, Sun Beach Mountain Reserve Municipality Regular Council meeting, open. It is now 4:01. To acknowledge that we live, work, and play in the traditional territories of the Scotland people. Date items to introduce.
No,
Okay. I do, however, have, a request to amend the order of the regular agenda by moving section 8 bylaws, and specifically item 8.1. Development cost charges bylaw number 02382026. To immediately before section 5, business arising from the public hearing. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Finold, second by Councillor Gillespie, all in favor? Move. Under 4, adoption of minutes, we have the minutes for the regular council meeting dated May the 26th. Can I get a motion to adopt the meeting minutes? Councillor Finold, seconded by Councillor Reagan. Any errors or omissions? Councillor Reagan?
There's a few, things that I have highlighted, the mayor and council's report. I think the presentation that you made to the community last, at that particular meeting was that the community meeting scheduled for the summer was not specifically just to talk about the Medicine Trail development in more detail. In fact, you talked about us having a working committee to proactively pursue Medicine Trail development independent of the community meeting. And it's really about the relations between the two communities and ongoing dialogue around the different plan and emerging emergency management services. So we could just clarify that in the minutes. The next item that we had, or that I kind of identified here, was that in follow up to the UBCM meeting. Right, I think the motion reads like it's because it's taken verbatim out of staff asking us for direction and input. And I think what we were doing in the motion was endorsing the list of meetings that staff had recommended, and in addition to that, we were seeking meetings with the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Health, and also meetings relative to emergency services and emergency first responders. So it's the way this reads is that we made a motion to provide direction and input, but we actually gave direction and input. So I think it should just be clear that we were endorsing what administration was recommending in the report. They are highlighted in the meeting dialogue, but it doesn't reflect that in the motion. The next one that they had here was relative to the item 7.4, I guess, is the temporary use permit, and I think we're following into a little bit of a track here in terms of the way the reports are coming out. But we didn't actually make the motion to this extent. We made the motion to authorize notice of distribution or notice of intent relative to the temporary use permit. Staff have in some reports recommended to council that we follow up with issuance of the temporary use permit, and that's embedded into this motion. And in addition, we're taking generic information out of the report, like the term, the manager, inspection, which are part and parcel of conditions, but they're not inclusive of all the conditions. So when our motion says it's subject to conditions, we only have a select number of conditions, not A to K, that are actually conditions in the temporary use permit itself. So we should just reference the Schedule A as being the conditions in that attachment. So that kind of paints itself out for both of the temporary use permit reports.
Okay.
And then there was one motion as well where I think they forgot to include the spelling of my name, but our recording secretary has already noted that.
They got everything started. Good. Good. Councilor West.
Just under new business, notes for myself were that I was encouraging employers to incorporate emergency preparedness into the messaging to staff during orientation for all businesses. And then reinforce these messages through social media. That is incorrect. I was never encouraging businesses to communicate emergency preparedness through their own social media platforms. The suggestion was that it would go through the fire hall as a social media practice for them. I don't think it's positive for private businesses to muddy the waters when it comes to emergency preparedness on social media.
Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adopt those as amended. Thank you. Okay, so based on the new order, we are going to move to 8.1. Development cost chart file number. You are your speak to this your report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking for second reading today of the development cost charge bylaw update. Since first reading, we've made some changes. The inclusion of employee housing at council's direction from first reading. We figured out a formula for that and how that would work to cover the cost of land acquisition for future employee housing. And the original parkland projects that were proposed to be removed have been added back into the program. Combined, these two changes add $130 per bed unit, per residential bed unit to the DCC rate. We've also updated the bylaw language to remove some ambiguity that was identified through the process of first reading and public consultation. As background, for those that aren't familiar, development cost charges are funds that are collected by the municipality from land developers to cover the cost of infrastructure required to service those developments. DCCs are intended to be a source of capital, acting as a reserve fund rather than a cost mechanism. And to date, Sun Peaks Municipality has really struggled to maintain adequate reserves to fund infrastructure required to support growth. And this has necessitated the use of long-term borrowing to fund growth projects. If you look at our current forecasts, our forecasts show that our DCC reserves will be depleted in the next few years unless alternative funding methods are identified. To put that into context, we currently have $2.8 million in our reserves, our DCC reserves. And just in the next 5 years alone, 1.75 million, that's 1.75 million, of that 2.8 million will be drawn out of those reserves to service two loans that exist in the DCC program. Those two loans were taken to fund growth projects, the surface water infrastructure, the surface water reservoir and the PZ4 reservoir. If it ever does come to a time where our reserves are completely gone, we still need to service those loans. And at that point, the municipality would have to service those loans with use of taxes or utility rates. So the purpose of the proposed changes in this bylaw really are to address those risks and those challenges and get ahead and get our reserves built up and improve our cash flow. We have received some responses from developers after first reading. I'll go through several of those now. First is that building costs are already high. Increase in DCC's 17.7% adds this burden. I absolutely understand and appreciate that. I'll give some context to that number of 17.7% though. Since the last DCC update, CPI has increased 4.8%, so the real increase to the DCC rates is 12.9%. In addition to that, since the last DCC update, we've done engineering work on 2 major projects in the program and found that the original costs in the project in the portfolio in 2024 were grossly underestimated. Those project costs have been reintroduced at what would be considered to be the appropriate cost estimates now based on the engineering work done today. That was for Alpine Road and for the Effluent Balancing Pond expansion, and together those 2 projects contribute to a 4.6% increase in the DCC rates. So absent that, all the other work done to the program really results in about an 8.3% increase to the DCC rates over the last 2 years. Another comment is that the current DCC rates are already excessive. So the word excessive is a little subjective, and we talked about this at the first reading here. It's very difficult to do apples to apples comparisons between municipalities for the DCC rates there. There's so many different factors that come into play when we're determining these rates in the project portfolio, but I think we're being asked to speak to it. So in response, taking a look around the province, we're certainly not at the top end of the rates for single family homes as a sort of a grounding baseline. In Langley for a single family home, you'll pay $72,000 in DCCs, plus another $19,500 in amenity cost charges. Some Peaks Resort currently does not utilize amenity cost charges. In Burnaby, $49,000 for a single family home, plus $27,000 in amenity cost charges. Coquitlam, $64,000. Whistler and Revelstoke, I think if we were to compare ourselves to anyone, Whistler and Revelstoke would be the closest. They're $53,000 for a single family home. Kelowna and Surrey, $52,000. Proposal under this bylaw for Sun Peaks for a 3,500 square foot home would be $46,000 in DCCs. Currently, it's $39,500. And also included in this list is Kamloops. That's a response to council's question at the last reading to sort of compare us to Kamloops in terms of we are competing for developers in this region. They are about $18,000, but there's some context needed around this number. So Kamloops set this DCC rate 3 years ago in 2023. At the time, they had $33 million in their DCC reserves. Today, they have less than $3 million in their reserves. So they've been able to support this low DCC rate by spending $10 million a year out of their reserves. In addition to that, they also, for some of their infrastructure categories, have a 10% municipal assist factor. So they're using tax funds and utility funds to support development in that respect. In August of 2025, Kamloops realized this was not sustainable. They had directed their staff to bring forward a major DCC amendment, and staff have indicated that those DCC rates in Kamloops will be increasing. So yeah, these numbers, we can go either way. I mean, for every municipality we find where the DCC rates are higher, we can find one where they're lower. I like what Kamloops does. They actually ground things in percentage of the cost of an average home to be built in the municipality. So Kamloops for $17,000 or $18,000 for DCCs for a single family home, the average price of a home in Kamloops being $884,000 for new construction. That works out to about 1.9% of the cost of a single family home. When you compare this with other municipalities, Coquitlam is 3.6%, Langley is 3.3%, Kelowna is 3%. Proposed rates for Sun Peaks municipality for the cost of a home, $2 to $2.5 million, is in that 1.8 to 2.3% range. So it's kind of in that ballpark with other municipalities, certainly not at the top end. Another piece of feedback we received was that the DCC update should be put on hold pending potential federal support for DCCs. Mark Carney said something at a meeting in Vancouver a few weeks ago. I'll be honest, this one's a little confusing to me. I would think that if there was the potential for the federal government to come in and subsidize our DCC program, we would want to update it. We would want to make sure that it truly reflects the costs of future infrastructure. Otherwise, we could potentially be leaving money on the table. The federal government is working with Ontario on this. Again, it's not clear on how that's going to work. There's some press releases online on the government web pages that indicate certain infrastructure projects would need to be reviewed and approved for this level of subsidy. So there's a lot of uncertainty here around that, and I certainly don't think we should be putting anything on hold pending something that's not a sure thing, and there's a lot of ambiguity around. Another comment is that the DCC update should be put on hold pending the election. I'm not sure if it's common practice for council to stop making decisions because it's an election year. DCCs are reviewed every year at budget time. The next council can always review the DCCs at that time as well and make changes as they see fit. The point of making this change now is to get ahead of any potential construction in the future and leaving us behind with an out-of-date bylaw. Another comment, developers already provide infrastructure in their developments such as roads, sewer and water lines. This is true. This is part of the regular subdivision process. This does not relate to development cost charges. Development cost charges are for the infrastructure required to serve infrastructure outside of new developments, outside of new subdivisions, such as water treatment, storage, wastewater treatment and disposal. There were some comments about the potential for cost sharing on some of the projects in the DCC portfolio. One example, Alpine Road construction, apparently previous conversations between Sun Peaks Resort, Burfield Heights, Peaks West and the municipality about a cost sharing arrangement there. So absent any legally binding contracts, we cannot include the potential for cost sharing or external funding in the DCC program. The best analogy here is for grants. So if we think we're going to get a grant for a project, we cannot include just our costs in the DCC portfolio. We have to include the full costs until that external funding has been legally secured. So in that respect, any projects that are in the portfolio without legally binding contracts for external funding or cost sharing have to represent the full cost of the project. Another comment that the payment of DCCs at subdivision, which is a proposed change in this bylaw, increases development costs up front. That is true. However, as per my report to council previously, the intention of this is to decrease the cost of development overall. I gave some examples about how delaying projects further and further and further, those project costs just become more and more expensive for the same scope. We saw this with some recent projects. This also promotes us having adequate reserves to do projects when the time suits us to take advantage of market conditions. It also follows best practice. I think in the future, if we have to take out a loan, take on debt to service growth infrastructure projects, which is likely, the inclusion of that debt interest in the DCC program is not automatic. It needs special approval. It needs to show exceptional circumstances and be approved by the municipal inspector. If we're not following best practice, and collection of subdivisions is best practice, it would be very difficult for us to be able to include that debt interest in the program, and that debt interest would then be borne by the municipality, by the taxpayer, by the ratepayer. In addition to this, there are currently no occupancy covenants in place on developments owing to insufficient infrastructure capacity. So if the foreign buyers ban was lifted tomorrow, if the real estate market took off tomorrow, development in our community will not take off correspondingly. We don't have the infrastructure to support development, and we can't build that infrastructure because we don't have the money to build that infrastructure. So again, part of the reason of these changes to the bylaw is all about cash flow and building up our reserves. I did hear some chatter that collecting subdivision with stairway development, there would be no development here if that was the case. Collecting a subdivision is best practice. It's also common practice. Just looking around, Surrey, the Britland, West Kelowna, Vernon, Courtenay, Gibson's does it. Interestingly, Gibson's a single family home, you'll pay DCCs of $49,000, which is in alignment with what we're proposing here. It's a little bit more. Capital Region District, Penticton, that was just a quick look around and ask around of the local governments. Our last comment here, the project list should be reviewed, non-essential projects should be deferred. This is an interesting conversation. We did touch on this at the first reading. So the direction from the municipal inspector is if you think you need a project in the future, put it in the program, put a cost to it that's defensible and refine that cost over time. Council discussed at first reading that in order to potentially reduce DCCs, the tool available is the municipal assist factor, not the removal of projects from the portfolio. A reminder that the municipal assist factor basically takes part of the subsidy away from developers, and the municipality fills that gap again with tax dollars and with rate dollars. There were some interesting conversations around some of the projects in the portfolio. Do we need to spend this money now, given financial conditions? I'll add to or reiterate that DCCs are a source of capital. So it's not about spending the money now. It's about the need to start collecting the funds now for when the time comes to have those funds available to expend it down into the future. I'll also note if we're talking about sort of rejigging the portfolio here, that 95% of the DCC program is water and sewer projects, and we all know how important water and sewer is to the need to grow here. With that, I will take any questions from council. Councillor Gillespie.
First of all, thank you to staff for adding some more context. Today I'm just going to ask for more. Couple things I flagged digging into this, that I'd like staff to look into. One would be staff is focused on using single family homes as their metric for comparing what DCC charges. The fastest growing aspect right now in BC, and has been for a few years, has been multifamily home. So staff, Director Burton has brought in Revelstoke as a comparable. If you look at the multifamily home, there is, from my understanding, quite the difference. The way we calculate bed units versus the way they calculate square footage. If you try to go apples to apples with a 17% increase in our DCCs for a multifamily home from a studio all the way to a 4-bedroom, we would be 91% higher than Revelstoke. So appreciate it if that was looked into. They are a great comparable.
Yeah, I can speak to it.
Okay.
Right now. So just high level, this is where it gets really, really messy. So a lot of other municipalities have low, medium, high density for like for shared homes, for townhomes, for multifamily homes. We don't currently have that. So this is where the apples to apples comparison actually gets very, very difficult. We have this one definition or two definitions. A single family home is 6-bed units. Everything else is 1 bed per 25 square meters. So when you look at that per square meter rate, are you looking at low density, high density, medium density? So to sort of go back to the councillor's question, I tried to make that comparison already in some of this text. It's very, very difficult. I'm not sure if we're going to get any information out of that.
Okay. I would appreciate, before I move on to my other point, if it's possible to get some more literature on how they're separating versus how we are. Just to, it's a big decision, like to be educated as much as possible on it. As well as collecting, the second point is collecting the collection trigger point from permit to subdivision. Best practice has been, the term best practice has been used. And in other communities in British Columbia, when it's single family home subdivision, there are several municipalities that do use the subdivision time for triggering. But I was not able to find any municipality that uses the subdivision triggering for multifamily homes in British Columbia. So I know that staff chose to use one metric so that we could get some data around it, and there's lots of them out there. But would like a little bit more, if we're going to use terms like best practice, I'd like a little bit council to be given a slightly larger picture on the differences between those two.
Yeah, can look into that, absolutely.
Just before you chime in, sorry, I was going to follow up on Councillor Gillespie's. Going back to the previous term on council, when I can't remember the exact year off the top of my head, but when Sun Peaks Resort LLP did their last master development update, I remember a key piece at that time was changing purchase patterns amongst the real estate market, and we were seeing a shift away from single family home buying and more townhouse and condo development. And so we saw a density and a shift in land design, and prior to Elmer Estates, I think the last one would have been Lookout, which is more than 2 decades ago. So if we're looking out the next 10 years, if those habits are to continue, the vast majority of our builds are going to be condos and townhouses. So if we are able to find a way to where we can get some data that gives a comparable on that, I think it's a realistic comparison for us as we look to grow forward.
Thank you, and I would just be in agreement. I think that it's a very important distinction. And if we're going to create something like residential, then perhaps in multifamily, looking at that instead of creating various densities, we need to distinguish something.
Yeah, that's right.
Just following that same thread and reading through bylaw, I think we have a little bit of a conundrum because we define, the bed unit on the basis of the 1 unit per 25 square meters of gross floor area. But as you go through the subdivision cycle, if one were to create a dozen single-family lots and one large multi-family parcel, I don't know how we would know how much gross floor area that multi-family parcel would attract without having a development proposal. So is the intent to not collect on the raw, what I would call the parent parcel at that particular point in time? And only to collect when there's the creation of a strata development or a phase strata development or something that's triggering a more definitive known, I guess, in terms of what's being built for the multifamily residential development.
So our zoning bylaw dictates that, so depending on the zoning for the land dictates how much gross floor area can be built based on the area of the land.
And so we would be collecting for the maximum amount, not ultimately.
So that dictates, well, yeah, I mean, if that's what's in the plan to be serviced by infrastructure, we would need to collect the requisite funds to build that infrastructure to service that much.
Good questions, comments?
Just one more. There has been some great correspondence from developers and people that are very knowledgeable in the industry, and it seems that they've been coming to us. I would encourage staff to reach out. It's a interesting landscape. There's lots of knowledgeable people out there. So gaining more knowledge through that avenue is just highly encouraged by myself.
I was going to ask if we go for and approving things, I'm kind of reading it, and how I read it as it says now, it says it can be collected, it will be collected at subdivision or at permit. In what we're saying with new bylaws, it doesn't actually say what it's going to be for what one. Is there a way for, because I mean, I do also agree with Director Burton, and I do have an issue with, it hasn't come up a lot, one new subdivision in the last 20 years. But going forward, if we have a subdivision with single family lots, we have to put the infrastructure in the ground, and they might build in 1 year, 10 years. We have lots that haven't been built for 15 years. So we don't have the DCCs for those things, but we have put the pipes in the ground. Where a multifamily is more of you kind of know once it moves forward, the whole thing moves forward. So there's kind of a less of a delay and a lag. Is there a way to kind of break out some of these things a bit more between multifamily and the single family lots? Like for when we collect, is that mechanism there to go, yes, we're going to collect at subdivision for single family, but at multifamily, there's an option to collect a permit.
We can look into that.
Well, go ahead, Kelsey.
Sorry, I'm just gonna add.
Yeah.
I think that's something that would be valuable to look into. Even if it's a proportion for the family that's collected at one stage, if that's doable versus all of those that begin for residential for single family. Perhaps you look at the two separately.
Councilor Ray.
I think we should look at the definition of subdivision then, because I think the creation, division of land into 2 or more parcels as a minimum is automatically going to be the trigger. Even though it says subdivision or building permit, subdivision will probably be triggered just by virtue of something happening with the parcel of land, even though it might not be an active development at that particular stage. So again, if we need to look at all of the wording and what we're trying to accomplish and how fast we're trying to accomplish it, right?
Yeah, I would agree to that too. And I think some of the things that I've read in my own research is that there are quite a number of communities that are collecting at subdivision when it comes to single family, but then a lot of times when a multifamily lot gets its initial subdivision, they don't have a design, they don't know what's going on physically yet. So there's options I see online, reading up on provincial and also in different municipalities where it's phased in as well for a period of time. A portion collected at subdivision and then later on comes record.
Well, just as we consider this. I'd just like to acknowledge and Councillor Gillespie's statement that, you know, we have received a fair amount of information and, you know, there are people that are grounded in the industry. They've, you know, been active and are certainly very knowledgeable from that perspective. And we have a much bigger challenge, right? We know we have some significant infrastructure gaps. And we've got some significant costs coming at us. And as we go through this exercise, I think we need to be mindful that there is another step in this process. We do have to call a public meeting of some form relative to DCCs. And I think, again, it's another opportunity for council to call that meeting, to be in the room where both the residents and the community and the development industry can present and have some dialogue around, you know, what the best ultimate solution might be for the development cost charger. So certainly as a group, you know, we'll continue to go forward. I think we also need to be mindful that, you know, what we do today reflects some of the things that we know today. What we will know tomorrow might be completely different. Right, we could have federal government funding, we could have the removal of the foreign buyers ban, we could have a variety of things coming at us. And this council and future councils are always at liberty to make adjustments. And then the last piece to this is that I don't think we should lose sight of the big picture. Playing with the numbers to make the number palatable is not the way to deal with this. The way to deal with this is through these assist factors. And if council collectively feels like we need to, for economic reasons or whatever those reasons might be, to keep our community, you know, growing and going, then the assist factor is the tool to do that, and we should use that as we collectively see fit. But we don't do that until we, I think, have an opportunity to hear more from the entire community, inclusive of the development industry.
Councillor
One more thing kind of to add, sort of, it's been touched upon, like there might be the support, there might be not. As we go forward and trying to hear more about this figured out, I think we can change because unfortunately for us, so much as local government gets dictated us by higher levels of government. I remember sitting over there like a year and a half ago, and basically our CEO had told us that at the municipal resort municipality meeting that a level of government above us had basically turned around and said, stop asking us for support on infrastructure projects. Your guys' issue is you haven't collected enough in taxes. Soon to this point, it's your guys' fault for not collecting enough taxes. Now we're hearing kind of veiled hints that they don't want us to increase DCCs because they're now concerned about growth in building, but it's sort of a bit difficult when you kind of get one directive and then a year later you're getting a different directive. I think we need to kind of go forward, as Councillor Ryken said. I think we can argue about what's in the plan and how much it's going to cost the building. Some of these numbers will change, but the truth is there is tens and tens of millions of dollars of projects that need to be completed over the development plan for Sun Peaks. And if we don't realistically look to go, hey, we don't have enough money to do these things right now, we're going to create a gigantic problem later.
The staff, just looking at today's recommendation, should we be amending that to include setting a timeline for like a public meeting as a part of that, or when should that be happening?
Director Burton?
I don't have a preference. Obviously, I want to keep this moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the next step in the process, is to have a larger community meeting, so that's planning for this. I think it perhaps just depends on the timing of how quickly we want to move forward with the DCC bylaw amendments.
Well, and I think also, you know, as we approach the end of June, we run into summer and then people are away and have vacation plans, and so soon, if we can, sooner is better, I think. I just wanted to touch on just a couple of things. I've made some notes, and I know there was some we were discussing earlier. So the Ontario Canada signing their new partnership agreement, focused on streamlining process around building more homes. One of the key pillars of that new program is funding to support municipalities in the reduction and or the holding of the level that DCCs are at. And we've seen, if you go and read the quotes in the news, provincial housing minister Boyle has said publicly that they're in serious talks with the federal government, on what she calls, quote, a made for BC deal around that same subject. As recently as last week, I've met with senior provincial government officials, at the provincial level, that tell us that they're very close to having that done. What it looks like, they're not sharing at this point. But they definitely want, they're hinting at the fact that they want municipalities to be ready and able to kind of be open for business, as they're saying. So obviously, it's a complex situation at this point. Do we need to amend that recommendation then to include something around public engagement, or?
My expectation, we would do that between second and third reading.
Okay. So the recommendation we have on the floor is that council gives second reading to bylaw number 238-2026, development cost charges for water, sanitary sewer, storm drainage, highway facilities, and parkland. Can I get a mover? Councillor Dye, second by Councillor Reichen. Further discussion, comment, questions at this point?
Just for clarification for some, we're giving this second reading, which really just means it's sort of moving along. But then there's all of these considerations that we're speaking to and speaking about. So so at third, we're not gonna get the same exact piece back for a third reading. We're going to sort of a public consultation, and then we suspect, based on what we're hearing and what we're seeing, that perhaps, or there's a pretty good chance that it's going to be looking very different when it comes, so it will change. So then we accept this, but then we move on to something which at a later date could be very different. Is that how this?
Yeah, we'd have to amend
So-
this by.
Right.
Something.
So we're okay with this, knowing that it's going to be amended quite possibly in the future, based on if there's more information gathered and so on. I just want to get my head around that, because it's. Anyway.
That's up to council, so.
Or do we?
After second reading is typically the time when changes are made to bylaws, that's why.
Right.
Not giving it third reading, so I don't see an issue procedurally with it, but it's up to council.
Councillor Reichen.
Mr. Mayor, is it, I guess through the staff, is it fair to assume that the questions that council have asked today, we will get some type of report coming back to us clarifying relative to those issues, so we will have more information, and at the same time, we will be scheduling the public part of the process that we're compelled to go through. And as I heard the mayor speak, I'm thinking we want to do that sooner rather than later, right? Not at the end of summer, hopefully before, the middle of July kind of thing.
It's my hope is that fair.
So I think that's how it would logically flow, and we will be able to digest the information we've heard from staff, the information we've heard through the public process, and then determine, okay, what is this going to look like, and how would we have to amend it in terms of reflecting council's will at that particular point.
Councillor Westman.
I understand staff's wants to sort of keep the machine moving here, and the mayor's comment on, summer's fast approaching. But I do caution, this is again a big decision. I do believe that we need to have the questions we posed today answered in a way that we can process them, and then also allow enough time for these knowledgeable people in our community to organize their feedback, and so that we have a good presence and we can see the landscape. So rushing would not be what I would suggest.
It's a great point, and I think just commenting on that is that I'm not, my goal is not to rush, but then my goal is also not to drag it out until September or October either. So just keep things on a track where we're doing things in a timely manner, but it's very important that we, I think, get some answers back on some of those questions today, and also set up some time that's realistic for that public engagement of both residents and the development community as well. Further discussion? All in favor? So moved. Okay, back to business arising from public hearing. 5.1, we have the temporary use permit renewal for TUP 2019-008 for 2442 at Fairways Drive. Director Hopper, here to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a temporary use permit renewal for an existing temporary use. They are proposing to continue to rent the principal dwelling. Their on Mountain Contact was and is currently the tenant. We've discussed that. There are potential bylaw changes that may impact that, and the owners are aware of that and will, comply with whatever further bylaw amendments we make that may require that to be changed. We, like we mentioned previously when this came up, there were the two, I believe there were more warnings that we issued for the clearing snow off the driveway and then the vehicle idling in the parking space. Those were both dealt with kind of on site when they were noticed, and there wasn't any more issues following that. No noise complaints, no late night issues, nothing like that.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have a recommendation, the mover, the council authorized renewal of the temporary use permit number TUP 2019-008 for 2442 Fairways Drive. Subject to safety inspection and following conditions in accordance with the Sun Peaks Resort Municipality bylaws and policies. Can I have a mover?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that motion, but again, this goes back to my comments earlier about the minutes from the previous meeting. So that motion, subject to the conditions, the conditions are included later on in the report, not in the recommendation as it sits in the report. The conditions are conditions A to K. And those should be the conditions that are identified in the recommendation. So they would typically be, the maximum occupancy, overnight advertising, all of those.
So you want to move the recommendation amended to include the K from the report?
In the staff report.
Okay. Okay, so I have a motion amending the recommendation to move the, including those requirements as listed in A to K. Can I get a second? Councilor Kimball, further discussion? All in favor? So moved. 5.2 with another use permit. Director Hopper, did you care to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a new TUP for property on Fairways Drive. The proposal is to rent out we'll call it basement suite. It's one of those high walk-up areas, but the secondary suite in the home. I did go by today to do the site inspection, the final site inspection. There were some minor deficiencies from the first one that got corrected today. The property looks clean and healthy. No issues were noted today. They had gone over the parking plan on site there. 3 parking spaces kind of side by side, and then there's space in the garage. Snow clearing will be done by a contractor and the homeowners will act as the mountain contacts.
Okay, so. So the recommendation is.
I'll move that recommendation.
And we're gonna amend that again.
With the same amendment.
Yeah.
But it'll be reflective of items A to J as contained in the staff report.
CEO Campbell, you're in.
I just wanted to make sure that Director Hopper and Director Monty are noting. Councilor Wright.
Yes. Yeah.
Feedback and comments, because it's easy to just copy and paste from previous templates. I think that's probably what's happening there, so we'll just make sure that we're
moving forward, okay.
putting our eyes on this when the reports are coming forward.
So the motion is that we authorize issuance of a temporary use permit number TUP 2026-002 for 2417 Fairways Drive. Subject to safety inspection and the following conditions in accordance with the Sun Beach Resort Municipality bylaws and policies. Also to include the conditions under A to J as amended And the motion is moved by Councillor Rankin. Can I get a second? Councillor Gillespie. Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? So moved. Okay. Moving on to 5.3, we have the zoning amendment. Application number RZ 2026-002, for number 8, 3250 Village Way. Director Hopper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll just get into it with some of the comments raised and more of the concerns about the application. The biggest one is probably that lobby access and what that looks like. As part of this review, when we received the application, I did a review of the building permits that we have, the occupancies. And that space is previously being approved, the building code side of things, as a mercantile occupancy, or retail occupancy. So, you know, the building code doesn't go into detail on cannabis use versus other use. But as far as that space is already considered a retail use. The other issues, the vehicle traffic parking was brought up again. That space is already considered a retail use space. Our zoning bylaws and the things we use for parking don't differentiate, you know, extra parking requirements for that. There seemed to be some concern about the short notice for residents in the strata. We did submit the public notice via email as per our public notice bylaw. Just gonna got it here, just want to make sure I got the right. Yes, public notice bylaw 0215. And the sign was posted up front. It was posted inside, and then we had it moved out to the front of the building there. And the notices, I believe, were sent out the notice was emailed out, sorry, back in the end of May. I don't know if we've got the exact date. And then I'll just, while Janelle's looking, the comments about kind of going and requiring strata approval prior to moving forward with any sort of development application like a rezoning. That's generally not seen to be best practice. They are kind of separate approvals. There's the strata approval and then the municipal approval. As nice as it would be to kind of make sure the strata stuff gets taken care of ahead of a lot of this, it's just generally not best practice from what we've seen. May 28th was
the mail.
when we mailed out the notice.
Okay. That's it.
I'm happy to take any other questions from council.
Questions?
Yeah, it didn't come directly from me, but there was an inquiry, I mean, it came through me. There was an inquiry about the licensing for the marijuana dispensary going through a lobby and not having direct access. What I could find was not very definitive, so it was moved along to staff. And can we get your insight into that?
Yes, we can, and I may pull in our contract planner, Randy Finley, Randy Lambert, sorry. But from what I understand, that concern is more of like a walk-through style of retail, not necessarily walking in through a lobby and in. Mr. Finley, or Mr. Lambert, sorry, did call the cannabis inspector for clarification. Maybe you mind speaking on that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, to the council's question, we did follow up on that specifically. And the way the regulation reads is that it's, what it's intended not to do is that you would have access through the cannabis facility and then go to something else. It has to serve as a dead end.
Full stop. So it does provide provision in the regulation to have access from a hallway or access through a shopping mall, for example. That you can do that. But once you're in the cannabis store, you cannot access anywhere else. And there was some clarity provided to the inspector as well relative to the storage that's on the rear of it. There is no access to that. That storage is only accessible through the exterior, not through the cannabis store or proposed cannabis location.
Councilor Reagan?
Just a question through to staff. Wondering where we would sit legally if we were to entertain a volunteer social contract. As opposed to having essentially social commitments that have been floated out there. Do we have the ability to for council to consider something like that at this point in the process?
Mr. Lambert and I talked about this briefly, that perhaps we could tie it to the business license requirements rather than trying to tie it at this point to the rezoning application.
To be like an addendum.
No, the business, well, we'd have to bring something back, with respect to the business license, or they're on the issuance of their business license, we can have a social contract component to that.
Is there something that would preclude us from doing it as a condition of the zoning process? I mean, it means we would not make a decision today.
I think if council's asking for legal advice, then I would ask that you defer this decision so I can get legal advice.
That's right.
I don't know. This is not something that's come up in my local government career yet.
In your experience.
One thing I'm kind of having some issues with, and I keep sort of circling back in my thoughts, is we know for them to get the proposal to be supposed to get any type of building permit to do anything in the way our bylaws are everything written, it kind of has to come through approval through strata council for any type of building permit, anything. We have no idea if they need building permits for stuff. We have no idea even if this can go through. And listening today, I do definitely have some issues with the fact that whether notice was posted correctly or done by us. I think we've heard from both sides of the argument that they feel that strata council, or they did not know through strata council and have adequate time to make a decision. I don't really feel at this point I know we have received one letter from strata council, but I am kind of hesitant on both sides to say, I don't feel that the representation of all the owners in the building have been portrayed one way or the other.
Director Hoffman, did you want to respond to that first part?
I can certainly respond to the building bylaw side of it and building permitting. So as I said previously, that space was, again, through my review of the building permit and the plans, it was previously approved as a mercantile, which is what's called a Group E occupancy and building code. And the building code and our bylaw, one of the main triggers is when a major occupancy is changed. And that's one of these group definitions, so group A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's already a retail mercantile use, changing it from whatever it was to a cannabis retail use would not kick in our building bylaw or the building code. Now, that being said, there may be other things they choose to do as part of getting up and running that would kick in our building bylaw specifically to those type of things. It's a very small space, so they're probably not gonna be putting up partition walls, but if there are certain things like sprinkler changes or potentially heating changes, HVAC changes, that may kick in a building permit, but that would be very specific to that one kind of component. So chances are a building permit will not be needed, which we wouldn't really need to go through strata for Well, referral for common property during the.
There's covered property, correct? If there was work being done that required a building permit.
In common property. So if you've got to run, if you've got to run a
Then
pipe
you would
through
need-
something, if you've got
then you
to
would
go
need
into
to
a
have
wall.
Referral from Strat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Kimmel and then Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I'm just, I kind of feel like if we've done our due diligence, in other words, the notice did go out, if there was a hiccup or blip. On the other end, can't speak to that, of course, they don't know what that is, but we have done what we are supposed to do. And we have created a situation where we have a proponent come here, we have yays and nays and so on, and I think that, if people were really, unless there's a push for more people to say, to oppose, I don't know that it's needed. I mean, if people are interested in opposition or in standing in favor, then they do that, and if they're not, they don't. So the fact that you don't have as many people in opposition or from there, it doesn't mean they're in opposition, maybe they don't care enough to provide a response. Again, if we've done our due diligence. And I also want to add, reading through what was submitted in terms of the submissions. There's a big difference between opinion and evidence. And I've found a lot of the what was submitted, other than from the owner themselves, was really opinion. And even then, there was a gentleman who stood and spoke to, forgive me if you calls me, who said it. If there's a reduction in residential property values based on, now, a bunch of research prior to this, and he brought it up again just to make sure. And in the research that I've done, I found no solid Canada-wide proof that cannabis shops in residential areas reduce property values. There's stigma still, but no actual proof. And I think, again, evidence is really important. The opponent has stood here and provided lists and responded to everything that has been kind of thrown at them with something really positive and what they're willing to do. We look, it's legal. It's legal, and they are doing what they're supposed to be doing to be able to shop in that space. So, I can say a lot more, but I'll stop there.
Anybody else? Down the right.
It was just a question, and the CAO panel was entertained up as well, so they may have wanted to address it. And staff just clarify the mail-in process. So my understanding is that everybody who is a legal owner gets appropriate mail notice. We do not rely on the Strata Corporation to be the distributor of the public hearing notice, correct?
The public notice bylaw, any notice required to be advertised under section 94 of the bylaw. May be given in a form manner indicated in this bylaw. And is in addition to posting, the public notice posting as defined by the council proceeding. Then it goes on to say any required notice shall be posted electronically on the municipal website notice page and electronically by distributing the notice through the municipality's email subscription services. My understanding is there is a bit of a gap where some people aren't on that email subscription service. But that's what the
My issue would be with the distributors, then if they did not, as Councilor Reitman said, got the notice, that building is quarter ownership. So if it's a sign posted outside, if you only own 1/4 of this building, there's especially with the time of year, there's a very likelihood that you did not know this, you did not see the sign, you would not have noticed it was there. It's not like a residential place where you see the sign go up your neighbor and you live there full time. It's in a quarter share ownership building. And one of my objections and thoughts of it is, it's not necessarily the fact that the park or the other zoning issues. To me, the fact is there's no storefront and access is only available through the common area of the hotel. And all we have that's definitive from the strata is they are opposed.
Councillor Gillespie.
Just to clear this out, can staff confirm that, they went through their procedures, when it comes to notifying, and there was, there was no discrepancy on their end. They went through the procedures as it should be.
I believe so. I mean, I can kind of triple check, make sure what we did was per the bylaw, but that would be the way we would operate.
Yeah.
Based on my understanding, I'm gonna get it on record, we've met our notification, our public notice requirements. And I don't think staff have any doubt that we've done this before, we've sent out and posted the notice as per our bylaw. We also utilize alternative public posting means that as changes to legislation several years ago allowed us to also use alternative methods, so we do go above and beyond. And also post elsewhere and sharing the notice. When possible, we utilize spin, but we haven't necessarily been able to do that based on the timing of their publication, but just want to put on record that we have met our public notice requirements.
Yes, sorry, again, I wasn't, in my question, I wasn't suggesting we haven't, it wasn't our issue that we need to give public proper notice. I'm just saying, to me, the weight of the strata, we've had, how many people here, how many online, we had many things. We do have a lot for, a lot against, but you put more weight onto a community member 4 kilometers down the road, or the strata inside the building where they live. And I'm not sure that we got a true representation of the strata, not by fault of our own. I'm just saying, this is what's making my decision tougher.
You're to Councillor Dye, that is absolutely what this council has to grapple with.
Welcome to.
When there's a public hearing, weigh any considerations you feel are relevant to the matter in making your decision. You have tough decisions to make.
Questions, any further comments? Director Hoagland.
Just maybe to try to close that loop, someone submitting a kind of response, that doesn't necessarily mean that just come here and show up and speak. They can email us following that receiving that notice. So I mean, you can send a 1-page email saying, I do not approve the rezoning. Like it can be fairly simple.
Yeah, not everybody has the ability to be here today specifically. Got a couple of motions here before I kind of jump into that. I did want to share some thoughts. I'm a few weeks away from my 59th birthday. And yeah, mine. And I got my first job in what I was thinking about how I would characterize this, in the controlled substance business when I was 15. So I wasn't even old enough to actually go into a bar and have a drink. But Darcy will remember, because we grew up in the same small urban town, and I worked at the Boston Pizza, which was open till 3 o'clock in the morning on weekends. So I got to deal with the bar crowd between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. So I don't have a planning degree or a botany, a science degree or a health science degree, but I have 44 years of lived experience working in bars and restaurants and pubs and dealing with any manner of level of activity and people under the influence of something. And I will say that I truly believe that despite some of the stigmas, and I think there were some comments brought forward by the proponents that over the last 6-7 years, we've seen it not just in our area, but in general, that people's mindset and approach to this subject has changed. And in some cases it hasn't. I do believe that our community is a safer place because of the access that Flight Deck provides, and in general, any kind of legal cannabis shop will provide. And I do personally believe that having a home in the village is to the benefit of everyone from an access standpoint and a safety standpoint. That being said, Councillor Dye's point, I think it's also important that we have to give consideration to the members of the strata and in that building and their feelings about this particular location. So that just makes the decision that much more complex and hard to make. So, Councillor Kimball.
Sorry, I'm gonna thank you, for sort of add to that, and being an economic development practitioner, this is, interesting to me. I've seen somewhat similar situations before. And again, just looking into things, municipalities that initially hesitated to allow cannabis retail later reversed their decisions after finding that shops did not negatively alter the social and economic fabric of their communities. In fact, in terms of tourism, it legitimately was an asset to recreational travelers. Which again, I think this is important. We're talking about something that I think will benefit Sun Peaks. And in that location, I think it's more stigma and actual evidence-based negative reasons. I think this is again based on opinion and stigma, not necessarily on evidence and fact. Again, some of it's been spoken to, but having passed flight deck back and forth, I have never, not once, seen anyone hanging out using anything that they've purchased. I guess I'm assuming because I've never seen anybody hanging out outside at all. Under the operating under assumption, they go in, they come out, they go home, they do whatever, but they're certainly not doing it there. I don't think that will change. They're gonna be in the lobby doing anything, certainly because they can't, for the most part. And so, I don't see that as an issue. And certainly, I was talking about, there's far more cigarette butts than anything else out there in terms of littering, etc. Yeah, I think it just. That's, I have a question again, just on the whole park thing. Well, I know that we actually have obviously the playground park. The other park that's soccer field, is that not like basically a parking lot now? Is that still?
It is.
Yeah, okay, so it's not really as relevant as it, it's just that one playground. Yeah, I'm given a lot of firsthand information from employees, businesses, adjacent businesses in favor of, and those that talk to tourists about how difficult it is to get to where the location is now, and that this new location would be a benefit to them. Even some of the submissions that I read in opposition were saying we don't need two, so they're obviously really uninformed because there will be two. There will be only one because one will no longer exist. So I think it just again. Big difference between evidence and opinion.
Councilor Rick.
Mr. Mayor, question through to staff, came up a couple of times, in the presentations to the public hearing, but there was talk about rescinding the zoning on the existing establishment, but I noticed that it's not in our zoning consideration recommendation. Is there a reason that it's not?
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Reagan. We kind of wanted direction from council on if that was, a vote and, sorry, I'm having trouble thinking today. We can bring a motion, like we can, provide you guys a motion to vote on that would, withhold the business license for the unit at 83250 Village Way, subject to submission and resolution of a different rezoning application at 1160 Sun Beach Road to rescind the existing site-specific cannabis retail use. So that essentially they would be separate applications as far as the rezoning goes, but the new business license would be withheld, subject to wrapping up the existing rezoning and cannabis use at their existing location. So they'd kind of be. You'd be looking at the rezoning separately. They wouldn't be kind of tied together, the two rezonings, if that makes sense.
Gotcha, Councilor.
I kind of have a bit of an issue with us going down this line of thought on the rescinding the zoning. First of all, the point said many times they would rescind the zoning. That's incorrect. They don't get to pick and choose, oh, I leave this location, no one else can use it for the zoning. And I think we also gotta be kind of careful of are we going to then say, oh, we're not gonna zone 2 spots in the village for a hot tub store or whatever? We need to talk about whether we think, in my mind, we weigh this location, is it the needs of the strata or what we think fits? And then do we want to then look at rezoning the park and the 250-meter thing? I think they're the two separate things. I don't really think talking about rescinding the zoning for that location is really relevant.
And I agree, and I think it came up because people, had submitted opposition saying that they didn't want to. So that was why they had said, well, we can let them rescind the other first one, that kind of thing. I don't think it was that, they're not doing that self-servingly, they're doing.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's incorrect because they can't choose to
Yeah,
rescind, they don't get to choose to rescind zoning because they're leaving.
CEO Campbell and then our planning, Randy has something wonderful too.
This was in response to the concerns around having two cannabis shops. So council can request that staff bring back the rezoning bylaw, site-specific rezoning for the existing cannabis location and repeal that bylaw, so that site-specific rezoning to allow that use will no longer exist there. If council were to approve the rezoning of this new location. So there would only be one location that is able to operate as a cannabis retail store.
Randy, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, sorry, just to supplement CEO Campbell's comments, and that is. The idea was to bring full closure, we agree, to this new location. Then, per the suggestion that brought forward by the applicant. Bring forward potentially another rezoning application that would rescind potentially. The site specific at the old location. Keeping them separate. And it's through that second rezoning application, then council could debate, do we want one in town, do we want two potentially in town? That type of thing.
Okay.
You've also got a recommendation in there with regards to the park, you would have to provide, if you're so choose to support the proposed location, provide an exemption to that particular section of the business license bylaw. Final comment to Councillor Riken's questions with regards to the social contract. I think the route to go then, if you so choose to go down that route of supporting the application, would be to structure what's called a good neighbor agreement. And Councillor Riken will recall that from Council's days. You can link that then to the business license bylaw, because now what you're layering is conditions on the business license bylaw, which the local government allows you to do. And it would be a legitimate contract that the applicant would, or the business license applicant would then have to sign. There would be conditions in there that you could either add, subtract, add new elements, all of those things. There would also be penalties for contravention. And which would either be fines, suspension, or ultimate cancellation. The owner, of course, would have opportunity to appear in front of you to speak to those conditions, cancellations, fines, whatever. Then if they choose to continue to operate, of course, there's always the courts and continued fine.
Councillor Gillespie.
So I think this was something that was brought up as a good faith measure by the ownership group. We have never asked a liquor primary, food primary, or liquor distribution site to sign and create one of these. They are governed by the same body. You know, more to that point, we know these community members, we know that they're standing in the community, and we know how they operate their business. So although it was put forward in good faith, I don't see the purpose of a formal contract in this instance.
May I ask, so when we got the letter, this is just one more thing that's popped in my head, and it's another sort of one of my issues going through this. The gentleman that spoke here today, he was not the Strata Council president, was he?
I don't know who the Strata Council president.
Sure, can we look up on the letter we received? Can we look up on the letter from Strata Council to see if he was he?
Different name from the letter.
Was he an official representative of the Strata Council today, or did the Strata Council today not bother to send a representative to this meeting?
Well, we may have had a representative here, the representative didn't speak.
Yes.
Well, I did.
They're online as well, just keep in mind, I mean, as we No, I mean, vast majority of the owners of there probably don't live there in full-time business, right? If not all. Anything else? Okay, we've got 3 recommendations in front of us, so just a quick question for staff. If we're gonna move through this and these initial recommendations are approved, is there a point in here where we would need to add this piece in regarding bringing forward the rezoning for the original location, or is that left to a separate time and place?
I would suggest leaving that.
Okay. Okay, recommendation number 1, I need a mover that zoning amendment bylaw number 02352026 be read for a 3rd time. Moved by Counselor Gillespie. Seconded by Counselor Kimmel. Further discussion and debate, comment?
Counselor Kimball actually moved the motion.
Okay, or did you move it?
Gillespie seconded.
Okay. Gillespie second. Comments? No. Questions? No. All in favor? And number 2, zoning amendment bylaw number 02352026 be adopted. Get a mover by Counselor Kimmel. Second by Counselor Gillespie. Any further dialogue, comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. And 3rd, that council exempt the Flight Deck Enterprises Incorporated proposing to locate it to number 8, 3250 Village Way from section 5.3C of the Sun Beach Mountain Resort Municipality Business License Bylaw. I need a mover, please. Counselor Kimmel. Second by Counselor Gillespie. Further comments or questions? Oh, all in favor?
I was gonna say, I think, so now if we're going down this road, I think we do need to look at the overall zoning, and how I look at it is there should be, if we've decided this is an appropriate use for the center of the village, it should be appropriate use for anybody. There can be through the cannabis and licensing distribution things, guidelines on how far the stores have to be apart. But I think we should look at rejigging it so it's not one site's down there, not one site specific. This is a valid retail use and should be included in the valid retail uses for anybody that meets the distance requirements and everything, which right now is 100. I don't think you could put, I think if it is like liquor, I don't think you can have a second store anywhere in the village and be, I believe it's inside a kilometer.
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I think that is correct, but yeah. So Councilor Rankin?
I think it would be appropriate, that's an issue for staff to develop a report on, as we're talking about creating essentially another zoning bylaw change. So I think we would be.
Deal with this as a standard.
Yeah, I just thought
Follow up on that. Provide us with some complete, I guess, a complete picture of what that might look like, but I'm not sure if we can do it as part of the.
Yeah, I don't think,
To be honest, I think, yeah.
it's just part of the discussion point.
Okay. Want to add something? No. No, Dimitri, go ahead.
Just on that line with the zoning, following the OCP, we would like to do a pretty good scrub and look at the zoning bylaw. So this could be kind of captured in that. That would be down the road, obviously, but it could be part of that review.
Good. Go ahead, T.O. Campbell.
One last recommendation that is included in the attachments, attachment E, that we missed including on the agenda, it's about 2 pages long. It's just required for the province in order to affect the change in location.
What's that final one, sorry?
Attachment A, which is.
It's essentially just indicating council support.
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
We should vote on.
Yeah, so let's just finish the vote on 3. It counts, so we had a you moved, right, correct? And Councilor Gillespie, you seconded. And further questions or dialogue? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. And then we had under section E, here we are, recommendation that council authorize the following resolution of support for the new cannabis retail sales, job number 123286. For the address number 8, 3250 Village Way, before the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. And then mover, Councilor Kimmel, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Guy.
So about this, is this basically the same then, even though it's a cannabis branch, the same as every other liquor application that comes before us? If we choose not to say yes, they have to go through their own process. Like, you know, if you want, like you wanna add an addendum to your liquor license, it comes to municipal council. Do you wanna support it? No, or no comment, and if it goes no comment, there's an alternate process. Cause every other
Comment.
We have.
yeah, but we're
Change that process. So that if we were not.
Now we're sending back.
Resolution. I think that would send the message that we don't believe that to be the case, which will probably.
Randy has a process too, so. Go ahead.
Sorry, apologies, you did comment.
Yeah.
You said when you originally did your first report, you had that opportunity to either say.
Okay, we have.
Deal with it, no, we won't deal with it, or no comment. You chose at that point in time that you were going to deal with it.
Okay.
To Councilor Riker's point, you are now dealing with it and have dealt with it.
All right, thank you. That's maybe my little bit misunderstanding of the process there.
Further questions or dialogue? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, so moved. Okay. Mayor, council reports, nothing really major, other than to say that we, what's today? Tuesday, so yesterday had the opportunity to be a part of a group that hosted, the new superintendent of school district 73 and the new secretary treasurer as well. We had representatives there, Braden from Sunbeach Resort, ourselves and some of our staff. It was a really good walk around. Some showed up with hiking shoes and some didn't, but they were troopers nonetheless, and they walked the property and then spent some time in the meeting. And it was productive, and I think, they were very honest and forthcoming and didn't promise us anything, but definitely gave us the sense that, they're on our side and in our camp and want to move forward with whatever it takes to brick and mortar school. But with the caveat that just because you're on the list and even when you're number one, doesn't mean it's gonna happen quickly, so. That's it for me.
I think, Mary, you also did miss that you were here on part of the PRD meeting.
Oh, yeah.
A couple weeks ago. I know a lot's gone on. It's easy to forget about it, so. I did get to pop in at the end of the lunch. I wasn't there for most of it, but staff and the mayor were there all day. And I did have the opportunity with the mayor last week to meet with the Skate Park Foundation and, there's been a couple little hiccups on the road, but we're working through the Skate Park Foundation. I think, you know, we're all still very committed to moving. We have a group of people in the community that have been passionate about this and tried to drive it forward for a long time, and I wouldn't say we're on the verge of having a skate park, but I feel like we're closer.
Yeah. That's it, and then we're on to 7.1. CO Campbell.
Welcome, Tyler. Down, do you want to make your room?
Absolutely.
We got 37 minutes left before we have to take a motion to extend the meeting.
Just an update in our commitment to keeping council and the community informed on the steps with the Sun Peaks Community Health Association. So the name change has been registered with the BC Registry, so it's now the Sun Peaks Community Health Association. The appended bylaws have been submitted. We're still awaiting approval on those, but they're under review. The current board of directors, which is mayor and council, are reviewing a list of interested individuals for the future board of directors. Selection criteria framework was developed. A number of individuals have submitted interest. I don't want to speak on behalf of the current board of directors, but if there's others that are interested in being on that association, I would suggest that you reach out to council. Once the bylaws have been approved by the BC registry, then mayor and council as the current board of directors will move forward with appointing a new board of directors, essentially affecting the change to a independent community-led association.
Awesome, thank you.
I just wanted to give council and the public, we have some Sun Peaks Resort staff here, an update on the Sun Peaks Resort Village stroll management plan. So municipal staff have been meeting with Sun Peaks Resort staff on this as community partners. This is something that's being led and managed by Sun Peaks Resort. So the village stroll management plan, which includes the Valley Trail, slope side, and brings together considerations for safety, access, emergency access, aesthetics, under one single framework. As the village stroll continues to evolve and obviously get busier as a public space and supporting an increase in events, there was a need to bring everything together under one plan. So it addresses grooming, snow removal, garbage, designated smoking areas, which is something that we did collaboratively work with Sun Peaks Resort on with our bylaw team. Also looks at landscape, maintenance, access, and signage. The plan was shared with the municipality and Tourism Sun Peaks for review and feedback, and we appreciated that opportunity. While SPR also maintains the village stroll, again, as community partners, we want to ensure that we're supporting these efforts where possible. There is a signage bylaw that is under development with the municipality that would allow us to regulate signage in the village and along municipal roadways in the future. So that is something that will come forward to council, we hope, in the next few months. As the village stroll gets busier, similar to other resorts, the resort would like to implement a bike dismount program to encourage bikers to dismount and walk their bikes through the village. There is interest in future enforcement of this. However, the municipality does not have the current bylaw resources to take this on at this time, but again, we'll continue to support those efforts where we can. For now, my understanding is the approach is really around education and signage, and that program will be rolling out at the end of June. And I understand that the resort's working on public communications and updates to their website. And lastly, also, the resort is rolling out messaging on micro mobility safety. So that's related to electric dirt bikes, motorbikes, electric scooters, mini motorcycles, and similar devices. We've seen an increase of those in the resort. And so some communication is going to be rolled out on that as well. If there's any questions, you can forward on to me and I'll pass it on to something.
So.
And second last update, wildfire season readiness and emergency preparedness. This is really a follow up from the last council meeting and the direction that came from council out of that. So I just wanted to update council that the fire department has been working on resources to share with Sun Peaks Resort and here those Sun Peaks. I also connected with the Chief of Mountain Operations at Sun Peaks Resort, and I'll be connecting with Tourism Sun Peaks as well to see what other support and resources we might be able to provide. Municipal staff, as council is aware, did participate in some recent VOC training. The training was limited to municipal staff only just because it was focused on really the role of the municipality as the authority having a local jurisdiction in the event of an emergency. We obviously have legislative requirements and obligations. And it was really important, especially with new staff on board, to make sure that staff had that training. That said, we are unique as a resort community, so we do want to continue information sharing and training sessions with Sun Peaks Resort and Tourism Sun Peaks and other stakeholders, because we do need to be coordinated in the event of an emergency and we all have a role to play. So we'll continue having those conversations with the resort and Tourism Sun Peaks about future joint training opportunities. And a reminder that in the event of an emergency, all communications about the event and alerts or evacuations or other pertinent information will come directly from the municipality's communication channels, website, social media. I did my CEO report on the agenda, provide some important links to our municipal website where we have emergency information. Sun Peaks Fire Rescue has a Facebook page. Our Sun Peaks Fire Smart coordinator has also set up a separate Facebook page as well. And then encourage residents and property owners to visit the BC Wildfire and Emergency Management and Climate Readiness websites as well for information and resources, especially on emergency preparedness in the event, of any incidents or wildfires in Sun Peaks. BC Wildfire will have this up-to-date information, and of course, the municipality will share that through our communication channels. On the note of communications, since Ms. Monteith has come on board, I don't know if council's noticed, but we've already increased our communications work and presence on our Facebook and our communication and our website, so I want to acknowledge that and thank her for all those efforts, and we'll hopefully be seeing more of that. And speaking of our website, our annual report, our 2025 annual report, legislative requirements required to be posted today, and Ms. Monteith has put that together in the first 3 weeks that she's been with the organization, so that is posted. I do encourage council members and the public to have a read through it, and it will be brought forward to council at the next meeting for approval.
Awesome, thank you very much. Just a comment that I wanted to say that, under the new village stroll management plan, it was nice to see a reference in there around the motorized piece, because I definitely have noticed an increase in those types of units in the last year or two, and there seems to be a bit of a people on a mountain bike seem to understand that they're on a mountain bike, but people on the motorized units seem to kind of treat themselves 1 minute like they're a mode of transportation on the road, and the next minute they're going to do the village stroll. And they move pretty quick. Okay, thank you for that. So we already did the 8.1 earlier, 9, we don't have anything under new business, I don't believe. And 10, 10.1, we have correspondence, received correspondence information from the CHBA and the Central Interior submission. We have some sweet bylaw letter from some weeks. And then we also had a Sun Beach Resort comment letter as well regarding DCCs. I trust that all council read that, and I just, it's one motion to bring those on board. I get a motion to accept correspondence. Moved by Councilor Dunn, second by Councilor Federal. All in favor? Okay. And
Just follow.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, can we, just ask staff to make sure that they advise all three of those, since they were all related to development cost charges, and as we proceed through the information process, we would make that continued involvement.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, staff have that. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Councilor Reagan. And then we have questions from the public. Or online.
I have a couple questions on DCC for context. How much money do we have in DCC reserves in the community today?
That's a good question.
If you don't have the exact number now, just put it in the minutes, please. Okay. Question number 2. What funds were used to pay for the water line overage? Were they DCC funds or others?
My understanding, if I remember right from the meeting, it was a combination, or it was some DCC funds and some reserve funds.
You put that.
But I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
That in there as
I
well.
appreciate that you might not know the numbers right now. I'd like to see that in the minutes, in the answer to my question.
Okay. Anything else?
There's a lot of this, but it's not the right time.
Okay.
I do have one, just, it's more of a probably comment rather than question, just going through the developer letters that were submitted. There was one from Brandon Lawley from A&T. He did highlight in terms of the flexible payment model with respect to DCC, the 75%, you know, collected at a later date. I did not see that in staff's comments back on the questions. I might have missed it, but it didn't jump out at me that specific issue was responded to.
No, I don't. You're right.
So, you know, Clint did mention about Surrey, and I just did a quick check to see, and yes, Surrey does collect it at subdivision, but they have adopted, it's my understanding they adopted that flexible payment policy of deferring 75%, I believe, until occupancy. So I think just some clarification and some consideration to that time of collection, I think would be appreciated. And I do appreciate there will be more time and effort spent, you know, by staff and council reviewing this issue in terms of just the overall DCC, but in particular, from my perspective, the time of collection is a critical aspect. Thank you.
Councilor Wright.
Mr. Mayor, so if we can follow up with Director Burton to provide clarification, I believe the legislation permits it, but municipalities have to enact it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you
That was one comment that, yes, that is now in the legislation, but it should be included in the plan.
yeah. So if we can make a note there, Director Burton's gone. so we can ask
Director
him.
Burton and I didn't speak about this, so it may have just been an oversight.
Yeah, and that's something that I myself in my own research read that in a number of situations.
Just a comment on this room. It's really hard to hear in here.
Okay.
Most of the conversations tonight I couldn't follow. I'm not got the greatest hearing in the world, I can admit that as well, but in this room, you need a little bit. Maybe a microphone or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
This end, it's really hard to hear.
And just one last.
Yes.
Question in terms of the rezoning application for like that, cannabis. I'm just wondering why, because there is an existing bylaw that prohibits cannabis sales within 250 meters of park. I'm just wondering why the bylaw was not reviewed and amended first prior to this rezoning.
That's a good question. Director Hoffer.
Yeah, we just felt that giving council an opportunity to look at specifically to this application was a bit of a smoother process through the whole thing, going to council first with that full amendment for a bylaw. That third one rezoning application, and then following up with the rezoning. This kind of doing it this way, just to give, from the staff point of view, gives us a bit more we may want to go in the future.
So will the bylaw be amended now to remove that section?
We asked administration to provide us with a follow-up report on.
Yes.
On that specific issue also, but Councilor Guy raised the point of whether or not we want to permit that as a permitted use outright. But I think it needs a lot more context, and that's a whole other bylaw amendment process that staff need to write a comprehensive report on.
And there is a new business license bylaw coming forward regardless, so it's probably an opportunity to do that, or if.
That's why it was an exemption, not a bylaw change.
But we do have plans to review, yes. Anything else? Anything on the line, you know? Okay. You're gonna need a motion to close this meeting and move into an in-camera meeting. Under the community charter, section 92B. The considerations of formal information received and held in confidence related to the negotiations between the municipality and provincial and federal government. Councilor Dye, second by Councilor Gillespie, all in favor? It's quick, too.